Hi, welcome to Yale and Hollywood Fest 2021. I'm the festival director, Quentin Lee. I'm really excited for the opening night as we're having a Q&A live stream with the director and star of our opening feature, Late 1974. But before that, I just want to encourage you to check out all the films and free live stream Q&As directly accessible on our website, yihfest.com. And please support the filmmakers of Yale and Hollywood Fest by buying an all-access screening pass, as all the VOD revenue will be split equally by the winning filmmakers. So without further ado, I would like to welcome director S.J. Chiro and actress Sophia Mitri Schloss, who is also a first-year student at Yale College. Hi, how are you guys doing?
Great, so happy to be here.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I love your film. I really enjoyed it, and so great to have it for the opening night film. And so I just want to start off asking you guys, both you, SJ, and Sophia, what's your background in filmmaking? Actually, that's the question for SJ. So what's your background in filmmaking, and how did you get to make your first film?
It's a great question. I started out in acting, and I started acting in junior high. So I was very into it all through high school. It was my major at Bennington College, along with French Lit, and very into it. Moved to Seattle after I graduated, and just started doing fringe theater, very grassroots, very, kind of guerrilla, amazing kind of, it was a bit like our graduate school. In fact, there were a lot of kids from Yale who came out. There was just like this, I don't know, this convergence on Seattle from all these different colleges. And it was like a graduate school of sorts, for a lot of people. Paul Giamatti was one of the people, and it was a great group. It was an amazing time, 90s in Seattle. Grunge was coming up and all this stuff. So, but I started really realizing that women were not being well represented, shall we say, in film. And it really started to bother me. It really got under my skin. And I started getting very angry about it. And I realized, the Bennington ethos is learning by doing, the whole annex theater ethos is just do what you want to do. So I decided I would apply to film school and become a filmmaker. I wanted to be the change that I wanted to see. I did apply to film school. I did get in, and then some family things got in the way. It was USC film school. So it was a bitter pill to swallow that I couldn't actually accept this nice offer to go there. But, again, it's just like, if you want to do it, then do it. And so Seattle has a lot of female filmmakers. The late Lynn Shelton, who was a friend of mine, Megan Griffiths, Britta Johnson. There's just like a whole wealth of Seattle filmmakers that are women. And that's actually very unique. So I had a very supportive community around me, and made a bunch of shorts. Always knew that I wanted to make what became Lane 1974, and finally made it. There we go.
Wow, that's amazing. And so now this question is for Sophia. I know that you were quite young when you were making the film, late 1974. And I'm curious, how did you get into acting at such a young age? And where did you grow up?
Yeah. I grew up in Seattle. Seattle is my home. And this is a question I get asked a lot, and I always kind of pause because it's not an answer that's readily available in my mind, because I don't really remember a time when acting wasn't something that I loved and that I did, and it was a huge part of my life. Ironically, I did not grow up watching TV. That wasn't part of my childhood, so it wasn't as if I was seeing people on screen and saying, oh, that's it, I want to do that. It felt much more internal, I think. I've always loved storytelling. My parents are excellent storytellers. So that was a really big part of my childhood. And I loved being read to. And so before I could read, I would memorize the books that were read to me and do all the different voices of the different characters. And so it felt like a really, really natural thing. I started taking some theater classes at Seattle Children's Theater and auditioning for some local student films in the Seattle area, which I loved. And this was when I was between 5 and 7, so I was really, really little. And then from there, I just kept going. It felt like a really natural thing. I loved it.
Because I know that, LA has a lot of resources, but it's not like in Seattle, there were like, I don't know, like I just know there's so many stage parents in LA, but I've never, what is it? I mean, like what was your first job?
Yeah. My parents are the opposite of stage parents too. It's not as if I had like an in into the industry or anything like that. And it's very true. And it's, I'm glad that I didn't grow up in that world because it allowed me to have a life outside of acting. I went to a physical school, which most kid actors don't do. They do online school or they're homeschooled. So it's true that there aren't that many opportunities for film in Seattle, but there is a really strong and wonderful Seattle film community that SJ was talking about. So I got to kind of learn about and be a part of that world from a really young age. And those are people that I've continued to work with throughout my teenage life, which has been so wonderful to have a community of really, really supportive people in what can be a competitive and difficult industry. But my first professional job, I'm thinking, I was in the pilot episode of Grimm when I was 7 years old. If you know the show Grimm, that was actually filmed in Portland. But my first lead role, I was the lead in an NBC pilot. So that was the first time I really took time off school, and went to film in LA. And I was in 3rd grade. And that pilot actually never aired. It was very sweet. It was called Isabel. But yeah, that was my first one.
Yeah, and also I want to encourage the audience to start typing in questions through the Q&A kind of box. And because after my questions, I'm going to be like, opening up the floor up. So, and the third question I have is actually for both of you guys. It's how did it's SJ, this is your first feature, right? Late 1974.
Yes, it is.
And how did late 1974 happen, and how did you two meet?
Okay, well, yeah, two long stories. I'll try to make them short. Okay, late 1974 was very much rooted in my own childhood. It's the children of the counterculture is something that I felt was not represented almost at all in cinema. And I felt, that's just such a powerful medium. I always felt like somebody needs to tell that story. Oh, it's gonna be me, but it was too hard for me to just think about my entire life and like, how do I pare it down and how do I make my life into a story? It just like, there's just so much. So finally in 2008, a friend sent me this book and she said, my friend just wrote this book. I think you're gonna love it. And it was The Hypocrisy of Disco by Clayne Hayward. And I read it, I devoured it, and instantly I knew, oh, here's my film. Because she was, just the way that she wrote was so evocative, and I understood everything that she was saying. I could smell that dry grass. I could smell like the garbage, the rotting garbage. I could smell like the moss it was just so sensory the way that she wrote. And then I met with her and I wrote the screenplay. Now I'm like moving very fast forward. My friend Mel Eslen said that she would come on and produce, and that gave me all the confidence in the world. Actually, though, her career started taking off, and now she heads up the Duplass Brothers in LA. So she kind of had to move to an executive producer position, and Janessa West came on. And Janessa West is a phenomenal force in the world, and together she and I were able to make the film. of course, with Mel's help and a lot of other people's help. How do we find Sophia? So Amy Renee was our casting director, and she brought us down to LA, where there's tons and tons of children. And we just sat and saw girl after girl after girl after girl. But as Sophia's saying, it's a very different vibe down in LA. And authenticity was super, super important to me. And of course, Lane carries the whole film. So I couldn't try to teach someone how to act in a certain way. You know, when they're more presentational and they're so like, hi, we're LA, you know, and that's not to say anything about these girls that I saw, because one was more beautiful and more committed than the last, but they just didn't have that vibe that I was looking for. So we went back a little dejected to Seattle, and Amy Renee said, hold on. There's one girl I want you to see in Seattle. And it was Sophia. And the weird thing is that, so she was 12, I think, when you auditioned.
Yeah.
I know that you were 12 when we shot.
Yeah, I was 12. I think I had just turned 12 when I auditioned.
I think you're right. Yeah. So the weird thing is that I had met her before at a Bennington kind of event. Her dad had gone to Bennington, class of 1974. It was too uncanny. And I had talked, I was fundraising. So anyone who does independent film knows that fundraising is a long haul, and it can be just arduous and sometimes painful. But you know, you have to, if you're shy, you have to really get over that, and you have to be willing to speak about your project at any time. So at this introduction of the new president of Bennington College, I got up on the stage afterwards and I was just like, hey, you know, this is the ethos of Bennington. We call on each other for help, and here's what I'm doing. And so afterwards, these two parents came up to me and they were like, oh, your film stars a little girl. Well, we have this wonderful little girl, you know. And Sophia was there, and she was so adorable, but she was too young for the role. And if you've seen the film, you know that she has to go through some very heavy duty stuff, very tough stuff. And she had little braces on, and she was so adorable. But I completely forgot about that when we were casting until I saw her again. And then it was just like, wow, this is a done deal. It's meant to be.
Sophia, so how was the first experience? Was that your first feature film starring in? Was that your first starring role in a feature film?
Yes, it was. I think I did receive the script when I had just turned 12. And when you live in this world, you read a lot of scripts. And like, even as a 12-year-old, I was used to reading scripts. It's kind of like a process. You go through it, you audition, and then sometimes you read a script and it's like, yeah, I have to do this. And Lane was one of those. And you know, sometimes your intuition doesn't happen, but this was one I felt really, like, viscerally. I really felt like I needed to play this girl. And so I went and auditioned, and it was one of the few auditions I got to do in person. So because I'm from Seattle, I put myself on tape for 99.9% of the auditions I do, just because the Seattle film world is so small that it's really rare that I get to go in person. But I went in person, and I met SJ, and I went in again later, and then we just started working on the script. And another really special thing about this project that is not common is that we had enough time before shooting that SJ and I really got to get to know each other, which was super key for this film, because by the time we got to set, it was as if we could just let everything go, and we had this kind of mind meld that SJ also talks about in relation to our cinematographer for Lane. And that was really important. That kind of connection was really important for this film because there's so much that's going on internally and there's so much stillness. And I think if I hadn't gotten to know SJ and gotten to really trust her to the extent that I had, it would be a very different film. So the whole process just felt really, really right. And of course, I read the memoir, The Hypocrisy of Disco, multiple times. I really got into it. I, like a little 12-year-old doing all my research, I was so excited about this film, and I really felt a sense of responsibility in telling the story because it's based on Clayton's life. It's reminiscent of many parts of SJ's life, and so I felt not only a deep connection to it, but also like it was my duty to really make this work. So I was very, very invested, and yeah, I feel so lucky that I got to be Lane.
Yeah, so SJ, so I have a question. So it seems like that it felt like a really autobiographical film at the same time that you were inspired by a fictional work. And I'm just wondering, like, for me, first of all, it's a beautiful film. And when I was watching the film as an audience, in the beginning, I wasn't quite sure who is the protagonist. And I was thinking, oh, could be the mother, could be the daughter. And then obviously at the end, at the probably second act, I realized, oh, okay, it's really the daughter. And that really, I mean, especially the last scene, without giving it away, that it was just so subtle and so well done. And can you comment a little bit on the kind of storytelling process, and how did you decide to shift the point of views and, what you were going for?
I think that people are not used to a child protagonist, but it's right there in the title, Quentin. But yeah, I think that just speaks to how subjective film viewing is. And you talk about the last scene, we had a pretty extensive film festival run. And so we did a lot of Q&A. So we heard a lot of like opinions that we were just kind of like, what? And the person was just like, obviously she goes on to blah, blah, blah. And we were like, huh? Where'd you get that? But yeah, so filmmaking, but it's all legit because it's the person's, once you let go of a film, it becomes the audience's film. So, whatever they think, it's legit, that's the way it goes. But for me, I had intended to make Lane like the protagonist the whole time. But another thing is that Kate Menig plays the mother, and she is so dynamic and so powerful that I can also see how that kind of, just the focus goes to her. And her face is so magnetic. And I was so grateful that she took on this role. And I think that, it's like nothing else she's ever done. And she just slays. She's so brilliant. And the way that Sophia and Kate worked together was very beautiful too. I mean, there were times where Kate really had to yell at Sophia and yell at her in her face. And then we'd say, cut. And she'd be like, I'm so sorry. I don't want to yell at you. Like, are you okay? And then we'd have to go again. She'd be right in her face again.
So this question is for both of you guys, and it's just like, what is like after you made your first feature and having done your first starring role in first feature, what is this one takeaway that you've learned from this experience that is important for your growth?
Go ahead, Sophia.
That's such a good question. It's hard to pick one thing because this film was so impactful in my life and something I still think about all the time.
Okay, keep thinking.
Okay, you go.
Go ahead. If you thought of it, go ahead.
Okay, I mean, the first thing that is coming to mind right now in getting to know this character so well, um, has to do with that feeling of aloneness that is so prevalent in this film, um, and just being comfortable with being, I think there's I think it makes a lot of people anxious to just kind of exist and to um, view your surroundings and your world without judgment. And I think that's what Lane does for a lot of this film. And so in doing that, I think that's one thing I really took away and have always kept with me and held really close, is just allowing myself to feel that kind of stillness, especially in nature. If you've seen the film, it's mostly takes place outside, um, and to just feel that kind of peace even in an uncomfortable situation, and to feel comfortable just sitting in your own body and just existing. That's kind of a big answer, but that's that's what I'm thinking right now. Yeah. What's yours, Esther?
Well, mine's much more related to work, and that is, I love actors. I come from an acting background, and having an actor that is like Sophia is just like such a dream to me. It felt so good because she's smart, she does her homework, she's inquisitive, she's curious, and she'll listen and have this dialogue and just kind of absorb everything. And then, as she said, once we got to Bodega, California, where we shot 15 days, our first 15 days, she could just let it go until I asked her to do something. So our very first day, we shot all the stuff without anyone else. So there's a lot of Sophia alone. So that's how the schedule went. We're going to start with the stuff that she's alone. So on the very first day, she's doing this incredibly intense scene where she has to get into a cold creek and lie down in it, right? And she was just like, okay, what's going on here? And I just launched into this Elizabeth Kubler-Ross stages of grief, like, and she was just trying to take notes, like, what, anger, denial, what? And I was just like, and you're almost to acceptance. And I think that's what you're talking about a little bit, like this just acceptance, of being where you are. But in my mind, it was related to grief. So, I mean, this 12-year-old is taking I'm not surprised she's a freshman at Yale, honestly. I mean, she has a very amazing capacity. But, this kind of actor that is willing to take risks, but I would never put her life in danger, but, just emotional risks. And really go deep. That is my ideal. So Sophia kind of set the bar way up there, and just going forward, and just prioritize working with actors who want to work like that.
Fantastic. So tell us, what are you guys working on next? I know that you have a feature coming out, so tell us about that.
Oh yes, it came out actually. It's already out. It's called East of the Mountains, and it stars Tom Skerritt and Mira Sorvino. And weirdly, I know, Tom Skerritt is such an American icon, but this is his first feature film. And it is very much like Lane, where it just focuses on one person. It really like gets inside that person and focuses on their emotional journey as much as their physical journey. It's based on the book by David Guterson, also called East of the Mountains. And yesterday, can I just brag, because I'm still a little bit in shock, we got a notification, okay, that Tom Skerritt for Best Actor in a Drama and East of the Mountains for Best Drama was nominated for the Satellite Award. And this is where I spent all day just kind of like, is this a prank? Like, is this for real? Because listen to our competition. All right, this is just crazy. Okay, motion picture drama. It's East of the Mountains, our indie film. Belfast, Coda, Dune, King Richard, Spencer, The Lost Daughter, and The Power of the Dog. So, I mean, that kind of company is just, my heart is just in my mouth. It's so amazing. So, I would love people to see this film. You can see it if you're a member of a voting body, it'll be out and available to you. You can also see it on iTunes or Amazon. It's all over the place. I'd really love people to see Tom Skerritt's performance because it's something very, very special. He shot it, you know, I went from a 12-year-old star to an 85-year-old star. So yeah, but he's phenomenal. He's absolutely phenomenal in it. And Mira Sorvino is just like grounds the whole story. And weirdly, this has also had so much to come from me. Even though I didn't originate this film, I was hired onto this project. But the film became very, very personal, unfortunately, because my dad's health, my own father's health started to decline. And so it was weird how, like with Lane, it was definitely based on life that had already happened. But with East of the Mountains, as we were shooting, this was unfolding. So life was almost imitating what we were creating. It was just, it was, I can't even explain it, but I really hope that people do get a chance to see East of the Mountains.
How about Sophia? What are you working on other than being at Yale?
Yeah, other than finals week, I am currently I'm a series regular on a Disney Plus show called Big Shot. There's 10 episodes out, and we were recently renewed for a second season, which is really exciting. So my plan is to take next semester off and to go and film, and that shoots in LA. So that is what is up next for me. And I'm so excited for ESTA. It's so exciting.
I know, great. Well, congratulations.